Have you ever settled in to watch a classic Western and marveled at the Stagecoach? Hollywood paints a picture of thrill and adventure, noble heroes, and maybe a touch of romance, all set against majestic backdrops. John Wayne in Stagecoach leads a diverse group through peril, emerging changed. But what if I told you that the Hollywood Stagecoach is mostly a fantasy? That the reality was far removed from those often exciting, sometimes comfortable-looking cinematic journeys? Today, we're peeling back the veneer of celluloid romance to uncover the brutal, uncomfortable, and downright dangerous truth of 19th century stagecoach travel. We're going to explore what it was really like to be a passenger. You'll discover a world of grind and misery, constant discomfort, and threats that went far beyond a dramatic shootout. By the end of this video, you'll have a much deeper appreciation for what our ancestors endured and why the real story of the stagecoach is even more compelling than the myth. Part 1. Hollywood's frontier fantasy versus the cruel conveyance. When we think of stagecoaches, images from films like John Ford's Stagecoach spring to mind. We see distinct characters thrown together on an adventure. The coach itself often seems reasonably spacious, allowing for conversation and drama. These cinematic journeys promise thrills, daring chases, dramatic robberies, or heroic sacrifices. The stagecoach becomes a rolling stage for human drama. But these films rarely capture the persistent suffering that was the reality for most 19th century stagecoach passengers. Hollywood focuses on sudden ambushes, not the chronic misery from appalling road conditions, crippling discomfort, pervasive filth, and the constant fear of disease and debilitating accidents. The romanticization of stagecoach travel helped build the myth of a young, adventurous nation, turning a symbol of arduous expansion into an emblem of rugged individualism. The actual experience was something modern folks would find almost unbearable. Part 2. The Concord, Discomfort. Coach, built for endurance, not ease. The most iconic stagecoach is the Concord coach, developed in the 1820s. Its builders aimed for a comfortable, elegant stagecoach. Its innovative leather thoroughbred suspension allowed the coach body to swing, offering a smoother ride than older wagons, particularly on better eastern roads. The design was so robust it remained basically unchanged for nearly 75 years. However, comfort was highly relative, especially on the primitive trails of the American West. Concord coaches typically held 6, 9, or 12 passengers inside, but often crammed in more, with extras on the roof or clinging to the sides. The inside was shockingly restrictive, just over 4 feet wide and about 4.5 feet high. Passengers were squished shoulder to shoulder with complete strangers. Mark Twain described passengers being mixed somewhat by the lurching, finding themselves in a pile at the forward end or practically standing on our heads. The leather thoroughbraces, while an advancement, were no panacea. Mark Twain recounted one breaking under heavy mail bags. One traveler described bouncing, now on the hard seat, now against the roof, and now against the side of the wagon, was no joke. Western coach models replaced glass windows with roll-down leather or canvas curtains because the jarring shattered glass. This meant less protection from dust, rain, and extreme temperatures. Mail, a primary cargo, often piled high inside, further diminishing space. The Concord coach relied heavily on the sheer toughness of those who traveled in it. Part 3. Are we there yet? The torturous truth of the journey itself. Roads in the West were often little more than dirt paths, susceptible to weather. Ruts, mud, dust, deep snow. One notorious type was the corduroy road, logs laid side by side across marshy ground. Charles Dickens described riding such a road as inflicting jolts enough to have dislocated all the bones. Progress was agonizingly slow, averaging 5 to 12 miles per hour, sometimes dropping to a mere 7 to 12 miles per day. A journey taking hours by car today could have consumed 3 full days by stagecoach. The consequence was constant, violent motion, leading to exhaustion and bruising. This was exacerbated by extreme overcrowding. Passengers were crammed into the small inside compartment, and mailbags became unwelcome projectiles. There was little escape from the environment. Extreme heat, blinding dust, intense cold, driving rain, and tormented by insects. Long-distance overland stage travel was relentless, often continuously for 22 days, both day and night. A journey from St. Louis to San Francisco took around 25 grueling days with poor food and no rest. Stops were brief, mainly for changing horses. Passengers were sometimes compelled to walk to relieve the fatigued teams or help push coaches up hills. The journey was a constant multisensory assault, an attrition of both body and mind. Part 4, surviving the stops, way stations and refreshments. Brief halts at way stations offered little genuine relief. Swing stations were basic for fresh horses. More substantial home stations were often private homes or small inns serving meals and rudimentary lodging. Even here, respite was brief. Butterfield overland mail stages made mere 10-minute stops. The quality of station grub was a common complaint. Taverns exploited captive passengers, serving poor quality food and charged whatever they wanted. Granville Stewart lamented, each meal was the same. Typical fare included bacon, ham, and the dreaded dried apple pie. Some frugal passengers carried their own provisions. Hygiene was another significant concern. Travelers were appalled at the conditions, especially Victorians, shocked at the laissez-faire attitude toward cleanliness. One driver recounted a station cook petting animals, then immediately plunging her hands into biscuit dough. When a passenger complained about dirt, the proprietor retorted everyone should eat a peck of dirt, to which the traveler dryly replied he didn't wish to consume his entire portion at one meal. Lodging was crude, women crammed into one room, men sleeping 2 to a bed, sometimes 3 or 4 to a bed with strangers. These way stations often became another layer of the journey's brutality. Part 5. The unspoken horrors, sanitation and sickness on the trail. Beyond visible discomforts lay horrors of basic human needs and disease. The call of nature was a challenge with no onboard toilets. Relief was sought roadside, offering little privacy. Personal hygiene was an unattainable dream. Way station facilities were primitive. Personal hygiene was accomplished at a horse trough. One inn provided a shared cup, towel, and toothbrush. Passengers were in a state of considerable filth. Infestations of fleas, lice, and bed bugs were common from sleeping with strangers who wouldn't have bathed in months. The most devastating consequence was rampant disease. The number one killer on the trails was disease and serious illnesses, which caused the deaths of 9 out of 10 pioneers on overland journeys. Cholera, the unseen destroyer, spread through contaminated water, often leading to death from dehydration within 24 hours. The 19th century understanding of germ theory was limited, often attributing diseases to miasmas or bad air rather than pathogens. Part 6. The real perils of the prairie beyond Hollywood's gunfights. While Hollywood fixates on gunfights, the most frequent and often deadliest perils were mundane. Accidents, mechanical breakdowns, and the grim reality of robbery. Accidents were alarmingly common. Wheels falling off, horses out of control, and brakes failing. Coaches broke down, leaving passengers stranded. Causes included poor roads, mechanical failure like collapsing wheels or snapping axles, driver error such as speeding or intoxication, unpredictable horses, and hazardous river crossings with collapsing bridges. Overturning was perhaps the most dangerous aspect, with high centers of gravity making coaches prone to flipping. Consequences were often severe injuries or fatalities. Stagecoach robbery was frequent. Wells Fargo stages were robbed nearly 350 times between 1870 and 1884. Robbers ambushed at slow points. Violence varied. Many robbers avoided killing, but it occurred. Primary targets were treasure boxes and mail pouches. Some robbers, like Black Bart, cultivated politeness. Others were hardened, uncouth ruffians. Security included armed shotgun messengers, and for valuable shipments, armored stagecoaches. Native American encounters are one of Hollywood's most egregious distortions, often depicted as relentless attacks by remorseless villains. Attacks did occur and could be terrifying. However, motivations were often complex. For horses or mules, resistance to encroachment, retaliation, or securing resources. Losses were largely livestock and property, not passenger casualties. The frequency and nature of attacks were often exaggerated or misattributed. Some crimes blamed on tribes were committed by white men in disguise. While fear was real, understanding the historical context of dispossession is crucial, distinct from simplistic savage Indian tropes. Part 7. The human element. Passengers and crew. The human element, passenger psyche, social dynamics, and crew lives, formed a crucial part of the brutal reality. The mental and emotional toll on passengers was immense. Acute fear, mind-numbing boredom, and profound exhaustion. The awareness of ever-present dangers weighed heavily. Interspersed with terror were long, monotonous stretches. Overarching all was pervasive weariness from continuous travel, lack of sleep, poor food, and stress. Forced intimacy in extremely close quarters led to friction. Stage lines like Wells Fargo posted rules: share liquor, spit with the wind, don't snore on fellow passengers, behave chivalrously towards women, and remain calm during runaways. Tellingly, rules advised: don't discuss politics or religion, abstain from profane language, don't point out sites of previous Indian attacks or stagecoach robberies. These rules underscore the potential for disorder. Drivers or whips were revered for skill in handling horse teams over treacherous roads, but faced constant danger, long hours, and often low pay. Shotgun messengers protected valuable freight, an exceedingly dangerous job as they were often the first target. These men bore disproportionate risk for modest reward. Passengers were a diverse cross-section: soldiers, clergy, scholars, servants, noblemen. Mail and money were primary drivers for stage lines. Passengers were additional revenue. People traveled for business, migration, health, or adventure. The journey by stagecoach in 19th century America stands as a stark example of the chasm between popular myth and historical reality. Hollywood painted an exciting, romantic picture. The historical record reveals an experience that was overwhelmingly brutal, profoundly uncomfortable, perilous, and shockingly unhygienic. The true story is one of incredible human endurance by passengers and crew who braved unimaginable conditions. The sheer grit required makes westward expansion far more impressive than sanitized Hollywood versions. Understanding the true hardships fosters a more accurate, respectful perspective on the past. The brutal reality is a more compelling human story than superficial glamour. The persistence of the Hollywood myth speaks to cinema's power, but embracing the brutal reality offers a more profound understanding of the sheer determination or overwhelming necessity that drove individuals to undertake such journeys. The decision to travel by stagecoach highlights powerful forces: the lure of a better life, duty, fortune, or lack of viable alternatives. This transforms passengers and crew into figures of remarkable resilience. The real Wild West, experience from a lurching, overcrowded, perilous stagecoach, was far wilder and far more brutal than any movie set could capture. So, what part of this brutal reality of stagecoach travel surprised you the most? Was it the cramped conditions, the terrible roads, the constant threat of disease, or something else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this journey into the real Old West enlightening, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history. Thanks for watching.